Hello, this is my PowerPoint presentation of JAMI, a requirement management tool. Here's a quick overview and navigation details about JAMI. Basically, you can do two things with JAMI: import items and create new items. You can add tags, links, attachments, add images, graphs, equations, organize the components. Um, Most of the requirement system for JAMI is covered in four specific subsystems. These are the allocation, traceability, verification, and the impact analysis. Allocation subsystems, they are implement which system requirements you are pulling from using the tool. The traceability module is a breakdown of high level requirements into more specific details. The verification requirements, it provides an implement and quality by linking the requirements to a test and the results of that test. The impact analysis, when the requirements change, identify, and the understanding has a ripple effect on the low level requirements, and the testing, this shows an impact of that analysis. Management tool for JAMI. The management tool, it explores and manages the projects. So there's our filters, releases, baseline, and test plans for the projects. You can view the item in details. There are specific components, folders, filter, individual items are located in the pane. And all of this is laid out on the right hand side of the consultant pane. The trace relationships, add a relationship for the traceability items within a change request. Most of the items can be managed associated with comments, relationships, attachment, versions, and also the activities. The keyword for the navigation workshop uses tags to cloud the item groups for the keyword. Version control. It connects to a back-end system or a database system or some type of system that helps manage the change of the requirements. It captured the change item levels. For example, one requirement may have multiple versions of it, as well as associated changes for that requirement. So if you have several different changes, it's going to capture that. There's a baseline capture, a point in time gives you a snapshot of those group items. And for example, a project is set for approval. The items can be created in the baseline. And then you have version changes. So new version changes of the system and time for each item. It can be compared for the past item. So if you have a current item that has been changed, the system or the tool can actually go back and compare it to a past item that has been changed. And it can also make a change to a single item. Traceability for the requirements. So allocation, traceability, verification, impact analysis, these can be traced upstream and downstream. So understanding which system, subsystem implements the requirements, this is the allocation for that. And as it relates to traceability, it breaks down the high level requirements into more specific details of that requirement, and it verifies, which proves the implementation of the quality by linking the requirements to a test and their results. The impact analysis. When requirements change, you want to identify the ripple effects to that change of the low level requirement and testing. This actually produces what is known as a trace matrix, and it shows the impacts of any changes for those requirements. It traces back that requirement also to a feature that a user doing an interview or information gathering it traces it back to that specific requirement. Reviews. Reviews are placed in 4 categories. You define it, you start it, you monitor it, you close it, and you incorporate it. So when you define the review, it defines what actually gets reviewed. Then, after that stage, you start the review. Then you want to monitor the progress of that review. And of course, you want to close the review, incorporate the changes. So with these changes, everyone is automatically placed in the latest revision. Reviewers can simultaneously log their feedback and approvals. All feedback is in a sequential with the document revision. It's easier to filter and view only the items that need additional review and feedback. So when the user makes a change specifically, it goes into a review process. And this here is where a lot of analysis is done. Where's the impact of it, the cost of that change? Does that change need to be prolonged in the future for another version of the system? If there's a second version of the system, it's a review process. And most of these requirements have to be approved. So you have several different levels because the impact could actually span across several different systems. Whereas other users that may not be, if you have a large organization, there may be several different departments that it affects. So this is the reason it goes into a review stage. Trace review, exporting into a format. So the tool actually can integrate with third-party software, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, as well as a PDF. And this is ordering documents. It allows you to arrange each one of those. It compares. The export has multiple relationships with. So if you have several different requirements and you need to do a pass or fail, block, schedule, you need to unassign, you need to prioritize your requirements, you need to do certain actions. It will allow you to export that in Excel because at one point, a lot of companies was just using Excel as their primary tool for implementing some of these automated system changes for requirements. The baseline. With the baseline, this feature here has several different versions that does not change. The relationship to a baseline, relationships does not change if it's placed in the baseline. For example, if you have 2 relationships at a time, 2 baseline versions, one may change version 2 and add a relationship to version 3, or you replace that baseline, you still have those 3 relationships because it's set up in a baseline. With the tool, if you revert to baseline, all the content will be switched back to the content of the version at that time of the baseline. So this helps manages those baselines, whereas if you was using another application, it would probably delete some of those revisions and you wouldn't be able to have a relationship there. You wouldn't know what it links back to. Automation added to the baseline. For a long time, requirement engineering has been automating a lot of the requirement gatherings. One of the reasons is there's several different versions to several different requirements. There's several different versions to a lot of the new requirements. And automated versions, baseline is a source in a container and it holds specific group items. When you add that baseline to a new group, the items are created automatically. A source can't exist without a baseline, but you want to set it up in a baseline so you may have global IDs, you may have current versions. You may have several different versions of that. So you want to set that up in a baseline. And this will actually create individual items. You can have use cases. You can have different strategic components, audit applications. You can have retired applications. So, which is a good way to manage some of those user requirements. For example, some systems may be retired, meaning that they took offline and the users are no longer using the company due to either policies, laws, or it's obsolete technology. They have a completely new set of requirements for a new system. Baseline helps you manage that automatically. Impact analysis. We spoke about impact analysis and changes in the previous slides. So, for example, if there's a requirement that changes or there's a new requirement that's added, how does this impact up or down to the related items that may affect any of the changes that you make? And it will allow you to trace back to an impact that could be changed. So, for example, if you make a change to a requirement and it has a trickle effect or domino effect on a system that may have a network and it crashes the network, worst case scenario, you can trace back that requirements without pretty much isolating the other system requirements where that change was made. And also, it's a very good way to set up test cases. And test cases, when you have integrated testing, when you have unit testing, when you have software testing, when you have those are where your impacts are going to be heavily.